Hello and welcome to Accountant Excellence Talks. I'm Richard Hattersley. Thanks for joining us, and thanks as well to My Firm's app for supporting this session. Well, as accountants up and down the country gearing up yet again for another self-assessment season, which likely means client chasing and standing knee-deep in tax returns, I'm sure you don't need me to remind you just how important remaining in control of your client is, especially when it comes to easing any practice stress. But as digitalisation and technology is driving an unprecedented change at the moment, just how can accountants maintain client ownership? So in this session today, we're going to be looking at how through things such as marketing, customer experience, and also technology, how accountants can really reinforce their client relationships. So to do this, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a panel of experts. First up, we have Amanda C. Watts, who is the marketing consultant of 22. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and also what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Amanda C. Watts, and I specialise in helping accountants to become more visible, vital and valued. And we do this through a 12-month training programme that teaches them how to install a marketing engine and really thrive with connecting with ideal clients. That's where we talk about the relationship side of things, attracting those ideal clients to them, and then converting those prospects into clients that have a wonderful relationship and become evangelists for the firm. We love what we do here at 22 and have had some amazing success, and are really pleased to be here with My Firm's app to talk about how important client relationships are.
Thanks very much. And next to you, we also have Dan Richards. Dan is from My Firm's app. So Dan, can you tell us a little about yourself and also My Firm's app?
Yes, yeah, thanks. So I've been in the profession about 20 years now, and with My Firm's app since the beginning around 6 years ago. And it's been an exciting journey. It's now the leading platform for firms globally of any size to have their own firm's app, to engage with their clients, to bring that relationship together and provide tools that help to collect data and communicate more efficiently. So yeah, great to be here.
Thanks, Dan. And finally, we are joined by a veteran of the Accounting Excellence Programme. Back in 2011, our next guest won the 2011 Small Firm of the Year Award when we were known as Practice Excellence. So next up, we have Alan Woods. Alan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and also your firm, Woods Squared?
Yep. Alan Woods. I've been in the profession since 1995. So yeah, veteran probably suits the title there. Woods Squared started in 2007, so just going up to 12 years with Woods Squared. Team of 8, based up on the Wirral, just over the water from Liverpool, and dealing with clients across the northwest. Really trying to use technology and My Firm's app really to try and really engage and cement that relationship with our clients.
Thanks, Alan. Before we jump into the conversation today, let's actually have a look at the agenda. So what we're going to be talking about, we're going to be talking about the subject today is whose client is it anyway? And we're going to be looking at why we're going to be talking about this right now. We're also going to be talking about how we can own the client relationship, how tech can help. And also we're going to be looking at some top tips to finish off the session and what you can do next. So that's all to come in this jam-packed session. But up first, why now? So the topic of conversation today, as I mentioned a second ago, is whose client is it anyway? And as I mentioned at the introduction, the accountancy landscape at the moment is changing a bit with technology and digitalisation coming in and driving that change. So at the moment, we still see that the accountant and client relationship, the accountant is still king, especially when it comes to referrals, which we've seen in our own Accounting Excellence results, where 3/4 of Accounting Excellence entrants cited referrals as a really big business growth method. So when we're talking about whose client is anyway, what do we mean by that? Dan, do you want to kick us off with the opening question?
Yeah, sure. So it's a really important question because, as you said just then, Richard, the relationship between the firm and the client is king and always should be. And so whatever other change goes on, and the accounting profession is no stranger to change. So there's an awful lot of stuff that's been going on. But it's an exciting opportunity to say, actually, this is my client and I want to serve this client and look after this client. And what are the ways in which I can make sure that that relationship stays paramount? And so as technology comes in, and there's some really exciting stuff that technology can help achieve, and the way in which in some cases it's disrupted, in other cases it's become a great enabler. But so if you can use that technology to serve the client relationship, to augment it, to bring you closer together, then it can be a great advantage. And that covers everything from pre-sale, so when you're prospecting and engaging with people from the first instance, all the way through to retaining that client and doing more with them in the future. It's then looking at, okay, what can I do to do that relationally? What can I do with technology to serve that goal? What can I do with my communications that's going to bring the firm and the client closer together?
Wonderful. And Alan, from an accountant's point of view, should accountants really be concerned about this?
I think they definitely should be. Yeah, I think there's a danger potentially if you don't manage the relationship properly and kind of keeping the forefront of the client's mind, that they may think, well, Xero does that for me, or Receipt Bank, or whatever the bit of software is that's being utilised, and really then that maybe devalues the service that actually the accountants provide into that particular business. So it's really, really key to make sure that you come across as being an expert and there to support the client, so that then when they are looking to implement those technology to help their business, that they know it's come from a recommendation and endorsement and support from the accountant.
Great. And Amanda, you speak with accountants on a daily basis. How have you seen this sort of change in the way of how they relate to clients, and what do you think's led to this as well?
Well, I truly believe that the way we interact with people has changed over the years, and especially now we're all digital. Now, whilst that is exciting for children, for us adults, we need that relationship. We need to feel connected, and we connect in different ways. And I think that the profession has changed. One of the reasons why I'm in the profession, my dad's a tax technician, and he turned around to me a few years ago and said, Amanda, they need your help because it's changing so much, which is why I came into it. And I think that it's really important that we need to focus more now than ever on relationship building. And we have to do it in a way that everybody builds relationships. We don't build them down the pub like we used to. So we have to be where our clients are, and they're on their phones all the time. And if we ignore that fact, we're missing out on a massive opportunity. We really are. So yeah, relationships are key, but relationships aren't built the same way that they were 30 years ago when many people started their profession.
Alan, Amanda there mentioned about how relationships was originally speak down with someone down the pub, and that was how those relationships were really built. You know, since sort of a shift from those traditional conversations that you were having to a more of an online digital conversation now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it all depends on, generationally as well. I think there's loads of different generations that we have within our team, and really that's a great strength for us because a lot of them are millennials, so they really take on board the technology and using those different ways of interacting with people. The biggest challenge we have is actually the opposite, which is, as Amanda says, that relationship building side, because it isn't necessarily the natural way of millennials to be communicating with clients. And some clients do like to pick up the phone, they do like face-to-face meetings. It's really important now, I think, to be able to be flexible and really tailor the communication and the relationship that you have with the client based on what the client actually wants you to communicate them with. The same majority of our clients, a lot of them are tech driven, so they're happy to be communicated in that way. But there are then other clients where actually, they're not going to respond to an email, they're not going to respond to something on a push alert, perhaps through my firm's app, and they need another way to make sure that they're communicated with.
And Dan, before you mentioned about how my firm's app is. Customers are available from smallest to the largest as well. So are you seeing this sort of issue prevalent in all sized firms?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I agree very much with what Alan was just saying as well. I think a firm, whatever their size, whether they be the largest in the land or the small startup with no clients and starting out with some great ambition, it's about making those conscious choices. So how can I turn technology to my advantage? But relationship is more than one thing. So relationship is occasionally bumping into people down the pub or the golf course. It is picking up the telephone to people. It's having face meetings. It's using the smartphones and the social media networks where you possibly can. And it's those things that add up to the sum of its parts. And so, yeah, the large firms, absolutely, and the small ones alike. It's a challenge that goes across it. The more people involved in making decisions around it, the harder that can be as well.
Brilliant. And we were all together a few weeks ago at the Accounting Excellence Awards. Not in our tuxedos today, though, and all that. But just as well turned out, though. But at the awards, we did see an uptick of app adoption. No question about that. 50% of entrants now citing apps as part of their success. So a question from this then, is all of these different avenues out there, all these different apps, is it sort of making that client-accountant relationship less sticky? I guess this is a question for all of you then. Does this sort of mean that the client and the accountant, the client may not see the accountant do as much, and they may think it's more through the software? I think I'll throw it to you first, Alan. What do you think about this one?
No, I think there's definitely a risk of that happening. I think there always has been, to be honest, within the industry, because clients have always perhaps not valued 100% what the accountant has done. You get a shoebox or a bag of records in the old days, and from that you create a set of accounts or a tax return. Now that information is still being shared with us, but it's being shared electronically. And I think the perception can be they've done the hard work, they've uploaded the document, they've sent it through Receipt Bank or Auto Entry or whichever it might well be, and the work's done. That's simple from the client's perspective. I think where we need to be mindful of is making sure that whatever we provide to the client, it's not just a whole menagerie of apps. We're not changing, we're not having 30, 40, 50 different apps that we're recommending, and each client is on a different suite of apps. It goes back to the point I said before about being an expert. So if you can say, well, this is the best solution for that particular task or that particular issue that they're trying to address, straight away the client then has that relevance and has that reliance on the fact that actually we know what we're talking about and they need to be with us to get the best out of the solution that we're providing to them.
Amanda, you finding that what a lot of your clients, are they echoing what Alan said there?
Yeah, I think overwhelm is a big thing. So many of my clients come to me, and many accounting firms I speak to, is like, which app do I need? How many apps do we have? I've got a broad range of clients. They haven't been focused on a certain kind of client. So with the broad range of clients comes a broad range of apps. And it's like, actually, which one should I be using? And I don't want to overwhelm their client, or they don't want to overwhelm their clients. But what's actually happening is they're overwhelmed, and that's thing following through in the relationship. And actually we need to think, how can we find a way to have less is more, so less and bigger impact, I think.
It is funny when I, just looking around Accounting Web and on any answers, something that comes up a lot is that feeling of being overwhelmed, whether it's legislative change, whether it's making tax digital, whatever you may think about it. There is that sense of being overwhelmed. Dan, have you sort of seen that sense of overwhelmment within the profession?
Yes, I have. But there doesn't necessarily need to be quite so much of that, I don't think. I think there is a lot of things out there. It's a fast-moving world these days, isn't it, let alone a profession. But I think one of the things that Alan has done amazingly well is take that leadership in the firm and with the clients. And I think that's what positions the firm as the expert very often. It's going to the client proactively and saying, this is what we think is best for you. Because ultimately that's what, as the clients of accounting firms, we're looking for. And the value that can create and the advisory relationship that follows out of there, which is helping me in the right direction. And if that's about a suite of apps that are right for my business, but consolidating them together rather than divesting control out into lots of other places where it becomes quite a disparate environment for the client. So with best intentions, that feeling of overwhelming moves from the firm into the client, and it's all a little bit disjointed. Whereas you can bring these things together and it puts the firm, to use Alan's word again, as the expert in that relationship, which is exactly where the firm should be positioned. Yeah.
And sort of speaking about, that's sort of a nice position there to move on to our next section, which is about how you can own the client relationship. So Alan, you mentioned about how it's good to position the firm as the experts, and client relationships are still key as ever it was. So what's the first point of building that trust in the client relationship? Amanda, I'll start with you on this one. Where does that client relationship start?
I think that client relationship starts with brand, actually. if you want to get me banging on about marketing, which I really could do for
only
hours.
there was a
If only there was,
in the
yeah,
room.
if only there was time or like. But I definitely think it starts with brand and how you're perceived. The first interaction that you will have with a potential client could be anywhere as much as 2 years out from them becoming a client. And you have to make sure that how you show up online and how you show up in the marketplace has to differentiate you, position you as the expert, show that you are more than just technicians, and that you're vital in the industry and that you're vital for those businesses. So relationships start with the moment they look you up on Google. So in 2011, Google did a report called the 0 Moment of Truth, and it's basically if you Google your name or your business, how do you show up online? And if you Google your name, how would you show up online? And that's the 0 Moment of Truth. So something don't answer that question. So I would love all accountants that are listening to this today, just Google their firm and see how they show up. And if they don't show up or they don't show up really well, then what can they do to change that? So relationships start as much as 2 years out before someone even becomes a client.
And I think if someone would Google Alan's firm and hit your website, Alan, the first thing that they'd see was a caricature of you and your different team members. Can you talk about how this has sort of helped give that good first impression to prospective clients and how you went about doing this?
Yeah, I think the main thing it does is personalises us. So it makes it so that it's less of a daunting experience. And that's all what we've been about is meeting with clients on a level footing so that they don't feel like they're coming in and seeing the headmaster or they're going to be told off when they come in. Some people dread going to the accountants more than they dread going to the dentist or so.
Oh, yes.
So we definitely don't want that. So the caricatures are really to try and encapsulate what we like, what we dislike. I'm doing it in a fun way, really, having a bit of, taking a bit of humour ourselves, really, which then hopefully allows us to break the ice and have that kind of conversation with our clients, and actually means then that we can probably be a bit more open with the clients as well, because we've kind of shared. I'm dressed in a Batman suit on my caricature, so standing on an airplane. So there's lots of things. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So there's not much people don't know about me just by looking at that particular cartoon.
Yeah.
So it does help to cement that relationship and just breaks down the barriers so that we are we're sat side by side rather than there being any kind of hierarchy or anything like that.
And how important is that initial touch point where you're setting the tone for subsequent meetings? How important is that is spot on and you get that right? Amanda, how integral is that to a firm?
Oh, ridiculously so. So I judge you the moment I look at you. So it takes me 3 seconds to look you up and down and decide exactly where you sit in my brain. Exactly the same with anyone you meet. You can't overcome that. And your potential clients do that the moment they look at your website because that's their first interaction with you. Exactly the same online. So the moment they look at you online, they're judging you. And if you show up and you look exactly the same as other accounting firms and you have no differentiator and you have no way to show your personality, which is really key because everybody's got a personality, let it come out. It's so important. It's so important. I can't stress how important it is. And what's got accountants to where they are today will not get them to the next stage. It's great that you've been able to use your experience and your being a technician and all this studying to get you a great firm. But the world has changed. So to get you to the next level, you just need to focus more on how you're showing up and how you're being perceived. And you have to craft it yourself. You can't rely on other people doing it for you.
And how you're being perceived, trust is an important aspect of that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I guess you can't undervalue that. And Dan, we hear a lot about the trusted advisors. It's a bit of a loaded phrase, and a phrase which we hear far too often or these days, which sometimes without the punch it was intended now because it's been used so much. But how can accountants go about that first step towards building that trust? What is that first stepping stone?
Yeah, I think it's a great point you make there, by the way, about the phrase being less valuable than it once was, and but the importance of it is greater than it's ever been. Yeah. And the trajectory of the profession where it's moving to, it's incredibly exciting, large and small firms alike, to be able to truly deliver on that advisory piece is very, very exciting, and it means a lot to the clients of firms as well. I think relationship starts and then that trust element by being where the clients are to begin with. Amanda was talking about it a little bit before. It's being present where clients are, and you need to know who your target clients are, and you need to know where they're spending their time. on a general basis, then we know just how pervasive and intrinsic the smartphones and tablets are now. You know, Gartner tell us they're at 90% distribution across the UK, the US, Australia, and other developed economies. But really, you just got to look around your own home or high street and just see, you know, people of all generations are plugged into these things. And so what that does is create an opportunity for the firm to go and be present, but in a place where most firms are not yet. Yeah. And that's exciting for firms. It's a level playing field. They don't need to have anything complex, they just need to be present there. And then start to create some value. That means sending some communications, it means providing some information, giving some tools, things that people can engage with that's tangible. And most of us are the same. If we can touch and feel something, we believe it more.
Yeah, totally.
And so if you can give them something like that, that's uncomplex for the firm to do, then it can start to deliver upon your promise straight away. And that's how you start to build trust, and little bits of trust build to more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Alan, from from the trenches sort of viewpoint on this, what's sort of your
You're looking good
Definitely a veteran, yeah.
what's your first steps when it comes to sort of driving this client relationship? What do you do to ensure that you sort of maintain that relationship with the clients?
I think what we aim to do with that, linking back to the trust element of it, is we don't profess to be something we're not. So if a client comes in to see us, we'll deliver them a solution, but some of them solutions may involve us partnering with other experts, other specialists, so that we're not going in there to say, oh, you know, we can do a marketing plan, or we can do a sales plan, or we can do whichever. As accountants, we are really, really good and experts in anything to do with the finances of that business. So if we can really nail that element of that particular business performance and management, I don't think then there's any issue then of us saying, well, actually, then you also need help with marketing, you also need help with sales. And for me, then that puts us then in a more trusted position, rather than trying to be all things to all men, if you like, in terms of trying to do everything and really spreading yourself so thin that actually the bits that we should be good at, we probably then potentially drop the ball on a little bit as well, because we're trying to do too many things.
And when I spoke with you a few months back, you mentioned about how fixed fees sort of comes in and sort of plays a part in your availability and providing that service to clients that they would expect from you. How does that happen for you?
Yeah, I think the fixed fees for us, it just clarifies the scope, I suppose, is the word to use on that. And I think a lot of other businesses use it. Accountants, for some reason, have been maybe reluctant to put that in place, but are also quite quick to then maybe argue or be disappointed when the client doesn't do what they think they should have done. So really the fixed fees for us and the agreements we have in place just really identifies what we expect the client to do, but also what then we will be doing as well. So there's less areas then for, you know, any grey areas to say, well, we thought you were going to do that. No, actually the scope said, if you provided us with this detail by this date, then we'd be able to do this by that date. So again, it's just basically like an action plan or a time frame, really, to be able to deliver on the promises that we make.
And Amanda, a question which I wanted to ask you was about, it sort of came from our Client Service Firm of the Year this year. One of the aspects which sort of helped them bag the award was how they would send gifts to their clients, how they would send birthday cards and Christmas cards, and that sort of nice introduction when it comes to retaining the client down the road, and also introducing themselves to the client as well. So, and as again, setting the tone. So have you sort of seen some of your clients which you work for, have you sort of seen them do similar sort of things, and would you recommend doing that in this sort of tech landscape as well?
Absolutely. I'm a big believer in offline communication and online communication, and I think when you merge the two, it works really well. But if we think about how, because it's all about psychology, isn't it? And it's all about how we make people feel. And if at any point we can touch base with our clients and it's of value to them when we're asking for nothing, then of course we're going to make that client feel great. So sending the birthday card, sending the Christmas card, sending a box of chocolates if you know that they've won an award or something like that is really, really lovely and shows that you care, and it's bigger than the sum of I'm doing your tax returns, which is, you know, that's what you used to be able to do, but not anymore. I think it's fantastic, and I'm not surprised they won the award because of it.
And John Stockdyke put together an article a few months back, you may have seen it on Accounting Web, where he talked about the client experience, how one of the firms likened it to being that person at the front of the restaurant, being the maitre d' and welcoming people to your firm. Is that something that you sort of would see some firms do, sort of having that, really focusing on that customer experience?
Yeah, I went and I visited a accounting firm in Kent, and literally I turned up and went to park my car, and there was my name saying, "Welcome, this is your car parking space." I walked in the room, into the reception, and I didn't even have to say who I was. The receptionist greeted me by my name, offered me a drink. I then went into the meeting room, and all of the I love brand, as you'll get used to it, but all of the the pens and the paper and everything were all branded really nicely. I had a box of chocolates that were there for me. All of that first impression was absolutely amazing. And I think if firms can get that right, they will be remembered. And if you are remembered, you will get referred. And as you said, most firms to date have built their business through referrals. You're not going to get referrals if you're not making a big impact on people. So yes, definitely is the long answer. And yes is the short answer.
Dan, maybe this question is not a yes and no question. So, so with this one, we Amanda then and Alan's spoken about a new client, how the relationship you'd have with them. Alan's spoken about how you go about maintaining that relationship. Is there sort of a difference between the two, how you would be with each client, or is it it's better to have the same sort of interaction with them as you go along?
Great, you're right. It's not a yes or no question, is it? So I think start as you mean to go on with that. Customer experience is incredibly important, and it's a rather obvious thing to say in one sense, because if you think about your own life, if you go out to a restaurant, use the maitre d' example. So if you go out to a restaurant, what's the experience like? If you buy something on Amazon, what's your experience with the bank like? That's why people like Metro Bank are doing really well, because they're using technology incredibly smart, but they're opening up stores to give that personal experience again, and it's starting to turn the banking model back on its own head. And you've got lots of things like that. So the accountancy profession now isn't just being compared to the next guy down the road, it's being compared to what else I experienced in all of my life. And so creating that experience for the prospect, so a person coming on as a client, is incredibly important. You want to build up that impression, but that should be speaking volumes about what life is like as an actual client. So it doesn't drop off the cliff edge. That's what double glazing people used to do in the past, isn't it? So you don't want anything like that. You want to be able to create a fantastic impression right at the very start, and then continue that through the firm. What Amanda just shared there was a super example of that, and each client will get that experience each time they turn up, and it's something to start looking forward to rather than dreading the accountant, as Alan was saying before. So yeah, making sure you get that relationship part right at the start in whatever touch point that's going to be, and or better still, on every touch point.
Yeah, I think it's multiple touch points. So, I gave the example of the physical, but there's something where we need to make sure that we're reaching them where they are. And just because I was there physical, there are many people and firms now, they're not just working locally with clients, they're working all over the country with clients. So we need to remember that if you can't do the physical roll out the red carpet, how else can we roll out the red carpet online? That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
And I mentioned at the beginning of the webcast about how we're coming up to self-assessment season. And I think that might be a nice case study to sort of see how tech can help an accountant really sort of cement those client relationships. So I guess starting off with you again, Dan, how could sort of automation help sort of accountants? What would be your first suggestion when it comes to tech and self-assessment and giving your clients that little nudge?
So there's probably two thoughts to that as a quick answer. One would be there's a real opportunity for firms when they're going to have such an intensive period of working with clients. I was chatting to a practice yesterday, and this very conversation came up. They've got a really intensive period over the next 2 or 3 months in touch points with their clients. So actually the opportune time is not to stop doing other things, it's to introduce those things you want them to do differently next year, right now, because you're going to see those clients. So the first thing is to say, well, make some choices now, start small, don't try and change the world overnight, just choose 1 or 2 things that are going to work for you, and use this opportunity to get them in front of clients whilst you've got these touch points. Otherwise, you put your head down, you go through tax season, you come out in February, March and go, right, I've got to talk to all those clients again and get them to change it, and you've missed that opportunity. But otherwise, from a tech point of view, it's to do stuff that's going to streamline the data for tax purposes. So collecting of data, start basic, mileage, receipts, income, stuff like that. How can you use technology that's going to allow the client to collect the data more easily themselves, more frequently, in a way that suits their preferences, and then get that information to you that you have to code less and less, and that will help to streamline inside. And Alan and I were talking yesterday, last evening, about the fixed fee thing that you asked about before. And once you've got fixed fees, the opportunity then is to look to profit within those. How efficiently can you deliver the job within the fixed fee? And the value to the firm can be quite significant, and Alan's got some great stories around that. But if you can then use technology to streamline that data flow inside the firm and with the client, that's where I would start.
And Alan, I guess this sets up you. How can how can an accountant use self-assessment season as a way to really own that relationship with their client?
I think for us, one of the learning points we've got is, and Dan mentioned it earlier, that the mileage tracker is probably by far the easiest way to get their clients interested in using some form of technology. It's usually the one thing that we get last, whether it be for a set of accounts for directors, what mileage have you done, or self-assessment for self-employed individuals. So if you can show them how to make that easier next time, and almost spell out the pain that they've had in going through the diary and keeping a spreadsheet and going back through and doing X multiples of whatever it was, if they can use an app instead, then that then just takes away that whole headache. So I think that would probably be the first thing I would suggest introducing to people as we go through that self-assessment process at the moment. But also then just say, well, once you've got that, well, you can also start logging your receipts, take pictures. Everyone can use their camera because we're all connected to the smartphones, nearly every minute, every day. So there's no reason why you can just take a picture of it, throw it away. You've done your bookkeeping, your tax return effectively for the next year. Links then into portals and kind of just having that ability so that information can be shared as quickly and as readily as possible. I think what tends to happen, and people get things sent through to them, so P60 as an example, they'll get that in April, May time, and the accountant won't be asking for it until November. And people lose things, or they misplace them, or they filed it away. If they could just have sent that through straight away into the portal or through some sort of app or some sort of technology, then they've dealt with it, and you can just start doing your tax returns as you go through.
Okay, so Amanda, we spoke quite a lot about brand already.
Yeah.
How can you use brand or marketing or even digital marketing to really communicate to your clients during this busy season to deliver their stuff early, or just to get them into check?
So one of the biggest problems that accounting firms think they have is that they don't know what to say to their clients with marketing. My answer to that is straight away, just listening to what Alan was saying, is if you have all of these wonderful technology that supports your clients and supports you, the emails that you could send out every single month is, have you checked out the mileage tracker? If you do this, it will save you this pain. They can communicate with their clients every single month, sharing this amazing technology that enables the client to A, hear from them and keep that relationship going, and B, actually learn how to help themselves moving forward and also help the accountant. So I think that communication is a really key term here, and I think that tech enables you to communicate so much better with your clients. And it's very, very simple. You could write at the beginning of the year 12 emails that are scheduled to go out and have automated. You set it, you don't ever have to worry about it. And every time a client comes on board, it's set and those emails go out. Technology is amazing. You just have to know how to leverage it so it's of benefit to the client, especially because the number one job in a business is to get and keep a client, but also to the accounting as well.
Absolutely. It gives you that opportunity, self-assessment, something really big, which gives you an excuse to contact your clients.
Absolutely, but then that's a little bit scary because you shouldn't have to have an excuse to contact your clients. I think actually you should just contact your clients, so I don't like that word so much. But I definitely think that there are 101 reasons why you could contact your client, and it's normally the things that the accountant within the accounting firm is going through is the exact reason why they should get in touch. So if they're frustrated that they haven't got the information, they should be in touch with the client. They should be educating. I'm not an accountant. Everyone knows that. I'm really bad at accounts. So if someone showed me that, if actually today I drove up and if someone had said to me, you've got a mileage tracker, why don't you use that? That's much better than my team going, what did Amanda do on this day? Let's take it out and put it on the spreadsheet. Technology is amazing.
Friend of Accounting Web and Accounting Excellence, Sharon Pocock. One of the things that she does is she uses a CRM machine to program in when she should be contacting clients, so she can have that spontaneous conversation with the client. So have you heard of this sort of thing, of having those just drop-in chats with clients just to check how they're doing and to keep the conversation going? Dan, is that something that you've heard of or seen people use technology to do?
Yeah, absolutely. We're all super busy, aren't we? I use it myself. So, you know, I'm constantly being prompted because of the systems that have been put into place, which allows me to be better at what I'm supposed to be doing and deliver upon the promises and all the expectations to our own clients and to people that we're speaking to. So, yeah, for firms to use that sort of thing, make your life simple. You know, set reminders. At the very least, use Outlook. If you don't have a CRM system, use Outlook. Just choose something that you can set some reminders through. Or if you have a scheduling system like an email program or a CRM system, or like with the push notifications, for example, you can just sit down for a short time and write a bunch of things that are going to go out over a period, so you don't have to be always doing something and trying to build it up.
Great stuff. And self-assessment season is just one part of an accountant's life. There's a little thing around the corner called MTD as well, and that, of course, would... I don't, what does it stand for?
I've got no idea.
Maybe there might be...
Exactly.
But it also provides another good chance for an accountant to help their client, whether it might be a client who is not familiar with tech at that point, and it gives an excuse to show their value and to show how valuable they are to the client. Alan, when we spoke a few months back again, you spoke about how you would take this ask for forgiveness rather than permission sort of approach when it comes to converting clients to cloud technology. Could you speak about how you went about doing this and how this sort of achieved in strengthening that relationship with your clients?
Yeah. I mean, I'd love to say it was, we wanted to just make every business client's life a lot easier, but actually we did it to make our lives easier as well, because if we can get our clients using Xero and the platforms that we understand the best and we're most comfortable with, it's real-time data, so then we can actually provide them with actual proactive. Trusted advisor was mentioned earlier. I think if you search proactive, it'd be on every single website for every single accountant, in the world. But they're probably just less reactive than someone else, because that's what we've always been dealing with. It's always been historic data. So what we've done with moving people over to the cloud, linked to MTD, but we've been sort of along the journey anyway, is we'll just transfer the data across. So if they're on Sage, or if they're on spreadsheets, we'll set up them on Xero, and when we have the next meeting with them, we'll actually show them their data within the Xero platform, show them how quick and easy it is, that they can raise invoices, that we can connect to it, that we can see the profitability, we can tell them what the tax liability is likely to be, they can plan so much better. And at that point, if they're disappointed and we have to apologise, I can handle that. Whereas I think sometimes accountants are always waiting to be asked, but unfortunately the business owners don't know what to ask, so everyone's waiting for each other. So we've just taken that kind of the lead really and decided, we'll do this, and then forgive us if we've got it wrong, rather than asking for the permission in the first place.
Great stuff. And as we've seen in the Accounting Excellence entry so far, 50% of app adoption was up in 2018. Which is great, but also, again, that phrase "overwhelming" sort of would come into this conversation. And Dan, with all the tech available, do you think clients or firms feel like they're giving sort of clients their client relationship away to like a third party? Do you think there's sort of a risk of this happening?
Yes, absolutely. I think what Alan was just saying there as well about leading the clients, it's so important. The firms that we see that are most successful, and we're in touch with so many throughout the UK, Australia, the US and other markets, are those that have done exactly what Alan's just been describing there. It's leading that client relationship, and that makes such a difference. And it's, I think, enjoyable for the firm and for the staff. So you create a much better environment in the business as well when you're being genuinely proactive rather than just sticking it on your website. And the relationship stuff, it is important. There are some really fantastic software companies out there, the Intuits of the world, the Sages, the Xeros, the others that deliver great services, the add-on partners that sit around those things. There's some really smart stuff out there. There's some not so smart as well, but there's some really smart stuff out there. So choose the stuff that's best for you, but don't divest that relationship. You're in charge still. Get the right stuff for your clients, but bring it together for two reasons. One, going to the title of today's session, it's your client as the firm. You want to be able to have all that stuff in one place and control that relationship. But also from a client, we don't want anything complex. If I can go to one place to find everything I need, that's much better. You know what it's like in your own life. It's a simple point. So if you've got one place to turn to, the client feels like they can use things more effectively, and the firm is in much more control.
And Amanda, I guess sort of when it comes to brand, stay on brand, keep it simple as well, and consistency. Would this sort of approach be the same when it comes to technology and how tech can just help those client relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple of points is one, nobody's spoken about the fear that the accountants might have about technology. So the thought of implementing all of this might be really scary. So I would say that the best way to learn platforms is to actually use them and have a go at teaching your clients. So if you come to your clients and you say, actually, over the past couple of years, all this new technology, we're getting to grips with it. We know it will help you. Let me share how to use it. Those firms will learn how to use it. So that takes away that fear. As long as you're open and say, I don't know this like the back of my hand, I think that would definitely be of advantage. And I suppose another example would be we bank with Santander. Okay, we have all of our children's bank accounts, my bank accounts, husband's bank accounts, business bank accounts, all with Santander. And the other day, my friend said to me, move over and use this other app, which is all online and really great. And all I could think of was, actually, I can't move over because everything is with Santander, and that's going to be an absolute pain. And when we talk about bringing all of these apps underneath the accounting firm's app, can you imagine how that will enable them to own the clients and not have the clients go to other accountants, because actually everything is with them and that accounting firm, and they won't see the disjointedness of all the different apps that they can use. So I think both of those things is, one, don't be afraid of this new technology, and the second thing is own this new technology, because then clients can't go anywhere else. They'll want to stay with you. And I think that that's the power of having this kind of app, very much so.
And Alan, is that something that you've found in your own tech journey with Wood Squared?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I mean, we've had the app now for several years, and when we first got it, we wrongly attributed it as just being a replacement for the tax tools and calculators and things that we had on our old website. Really didn't understand the value that it generates and it creates. What we've now utilising it for is using it to emphasise our interest in certain sectors or certain industries. So we've got an engineering group within the app, so that if they're an engineering client, rather than having to go on and download all kinds of different apps that relate to their business, they install the one app that's the My Firm's app one that we've got, click on the engineering tab, and it gives them then the shortcuts to the relevant bits of software that they're going to need. So it's really making sure that, as Amanda says, then they're constantly bringing them back to you, even if then they do go off to Xero or they go off to Chaser or Receipt Bank or wherever it might well be. They've still gone through you first, so it's you that's forefront in their mind.
Yeah, totally.
I guess that puts us nicely to the final section of today's session, which is what to do now. So the title of this session was called "Whose Client Is It Anyway?" and hopefully we've answered that. It's the accountants. And so
there's a clue.
Absolutely.
it was going to be some sort of swerve at the end where it was someone else's, but no, I'm afraid not. So we've answered that. So what can an accountant do now? Watching the session, what would be your top advice for them to go away? What would be the one thing they can do to really own that relationship? Dan, we're going to start with you on this one.
Well, I would suggest start small. You don't want to leave a conversation like this or any of these things that go on and think, to use the word that's been cited earlier, be overwhelmed. You go, man, there's so much I need to do there. I've got to sort my branding, I've got to sort my website, I've got to choose all these 100 different apps that can be right for my client. Start somewhere first and foremost. And I would suggest that is, and I'll ask these two their honest opinions in a moment, but I would suggest that's by having your own firm's app. We've seen that, the increase in that use through the shortlisted firms this year by having their own app that brings things together. And it's a simple thing to begin with. So they've got one step, which then, once they've got that part working, they can start to leverage it in their marketing. They can start to enhance the client experience further. They can make other choices around a portal app maybe in the future that they can then add into their own app at the right times, because they can develop and grow with them at that point. So make some simple choices that they can implement quickly. And as you asked earlier, because it's tax self-assessment season coming up, do something you can get up and running with super quick so that you can then use that opportunity to speak to clients over the next 2 or 3 months.
Amanda, would you agree the same with?
Yeah,
Dan?
absolutely, totally agree. And I think that the one problem that accounting firms have is differentiating themselves in the marketplace and making sure that they are seen as valuable. The only way that you're going to be seen as valuable is to provide a great service. And the best way to provide a great service is to make steps to actually get to the point where you are comfortable and not overwhelmed. But those steps start with that first making a decision. So make that decision and then seek out people that can support you and guide you on that, which is exactly what My Firm's app do when you have that app, is you have it and then they support you with the usage of it as well. And definitely, you can't eat an elephant in one go. You have to have it bite by bite by bite. So start at the beginning.
Is there another section? I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Alan, how important is that, having that sort of, what Amanda was saying there about some sort of support along the way? How important is that for you as a practitioner?
Massive, yeah, because the conversations that we've had with Dan and his team is what's helped us to evolve into getting more out of the app at each stage. So as Dan said, the first thing we had an app. So step one, yeah, tick. And really, we're sort of 3-4 years on from that first step, and really only now in this last sort of 6 months or so has it really crystallised with me how we actually can start to leverage that app to actually help to develop and strengthen relationships either with new clients or existing clients. I think as a next step as well for clients, because there may well be some people watching that have got the app but maybe don't know then what to do with it. So I think for those people that are in that scenario, what I'd maybe suggest they look at is what is their most popular service that they're providing. Obviously tax season at the moment, so it may well be tax returns. So think about that journey. What does the client do from start to finish? And how can they then use that app to help to simplify that process from start to finish? And once that's been dealt with, then move on to accounts, then maybe move on to VAT, then maybe move on to something else. So again, it's just trying to do things in stages.
And how do you get clients to embrace, I guess using the app as an example of this, but how do you get them to embrace technology like this? Is it something which you just say, oh, just download it and that's fine? Or is there how do you put that as part of your meetings with clients and your communication with them? How do you get them to fully embrace it and use it to its full advantage?
The key, I think, is to make sure that it's not a passing comment. Oh, by the way, we've got an app if you wanted to download it. And chances are nobody will download it because you've almost thrown away the value of having it in the first place. So as part of the onboarding process, I think it's key to say, well, these are the apps that we select or we'd suggest your business would benefit from. But rather than going away and downloading 7 apps, download our My Firm's app, and actually there's shortcuts to each of them 7 built into the app. So again, it just keeps that control element, I suppose, within that one place, so that people aren't, if you ask people to download 7 things, they might download 1, but they're not going to download all 7 of them, and the chances are then that adoption of technology, which ultimately, as I said before, there's a huge benefit to us as the accountants for them to adopt the technology. So there's a selfish element to this, but it means then we can provide a much better service to them as a result as well.
And it's funny that you mentioned that the onboarding process, because that's really where we started, Amanda, when you were speaking about the first touch point with a client. This happens like several months before you've even spoken with them. And I guess when it comes to technology, it really should be at that onboarding stage that you really get them to take up these things. What would you say would be a good opportunity for a client to?
Yeah, I think actually it can be done beforehand. So you can use it as a marketing tool. You can download your accounting app. And so as someone who was looking for an accountant, would I go with the accountant who has the website that's very traditional, old-fashioned, and is the same as everyone else? Or will I go with the accounting firm that actually is present on social media, who has this amazing app, who is forward-thinking, is slightly quirky, like our man here next to us, and has a personality? Well, if I have the opportunity to download an app and it's sat on my phone, which, by the way, I spend about 3 hours a day on, if that app's on my phone before I've even bought from that accounting firm, I'm going to be reminded about them every single day. And they're the firm that I'm going to go with because they're there in my face.
I guess, Dan, it sort of goes back to the old expression of the man down the pub said this, and accountants come up against that.
You met him as well.
Well, they always say the man down the pub said this. I'm sure, Alan, you probably had that conversation with many clients about that man down the pub said I could do this. The smartphone is now really, in many respects, it can be the new man down the pub with Google and everything like that. So this is sort of going to where that man down the pub is and owning that relationship, I guess.
I think it's really very well put. If you can have the client come back to you all the while, it's what you want, isn't it? Will Farnell speaks about this. He says, part of being a trusted advisor is that the client turns to you first for the questions that they've got. So rather than jumping onto Google or Safari or some other such place, they're touching on your app and they're getting the answers that they need. It might be tax related, calculators, there's some fantastic stuff. They can sit inside these things. It's ever so easy to use, but it can lead the client back into the firm. When they're looking at the answer, they can tap a button to send you a message, whatever it might be, or using some of the tools, or better still, proactively receiving your messages that pop up on the screen. They're 5 times more effective than using emails, so they get, for the reasons that Amanda said, that your phone's always there, it's present when it pings, you look at it. So when those sorts of things come through, you are owning that man in the pub relationship. Yeah, nicely put.
Yeah. Absolutely, and I'm afraid we're coming up to the end of the webcast. I know it goes far too quickly. But we've just
so much more to say.
Well, Amanda, we've just got a little time left though. The floor is all yours. We've just got enough time to have a last final tip from each of you. So starting with you, Alan, we'll build up to you, Amanda, to finish off. So, Alan, when it comes to the whole of owning your client relationship, across everything we've spoken about, from the client experience, from marketing, where would be the first point which you would start that conversation if you were an accountant? What would be your first big tip then?
If I was an accountant, there's a leading question. So I think where we would start that conversation would be looking at it internally first. Amanda mentioned it earlier. For anyone to have credibility and to have comfort with something, you have to have practiced it first. So if you can practice that using that app. So we do it in the office. So if someone rings with a query to say, I'm looking to employ someone, what would their net pay be on this particular wage? We'll run that through on the app. And then we'll give the feedback then to the client to say, it's this, but actually, did you know there's things like this, there's calculators, there's tools that you can use on our app that you can just get this right away. So that would probably be a sort of a tip to try and use it, because yes, you can get an app, but if you don't start to get people to actually start to engage with it, then that you're not really getting the value from it. We found as well that actually our introducers, so banks, IFAs, solicitors in particular, love the app as well, because they can do those calculations when they're with clients, and even tell their clients to download our app because it gives them the answers to stamp duty, land tax calculations, or whatever it might be. So just really get into the habit of actually using it yourself, and then it just becomes more normal and natural when you start to encourage other people to use it.
Great stuff. And Dan, what's your final tip when it comes to owning that client relationship?
As we've said earlier, to start small. Start somewhere and begin to do it. Actually, probably one stage before that would be make that conscious decision. We've had a bit of fun talking about it this afternoon, but actually it's something that's too easily overlooked because we just get on with being busy. So consciously make that decision. Actually, this is my client relationship. I want to own this. That's the longevity and the value in my firm, to put it very bluntly. But also it creates the best experience for the client. And so having made that decision, then say, well, what's the building blocks towards that? Because you're not going to achieve everything overnight. Something like Alan was just describing is a great place to start. Download the app, you can put it in place, and you have a versatility. So with that versatility, you can then start to follow Amanda on LinkedIn and see such great marketing advice and all those sorts of things. Actually, I could use it here and there. And we're seeing some firms do some amazing stuff with that at the moment. As Alan was saying earlier, just picking on individual bits of functionality. Start with a mileage tracker, use GPS, make your life easy. So yes, start in there.
And Amanda, what would be your final tip when it comes to owning the client relationship?
I think that what accountants really need to do is understand that their business hasn't been created for them, it's been created for the client. So to own the client relationship, you need to understand your client. And I would say that the kind of high value clients that people want to work with, they are already on their smartphones all the time. You know, we've got watches that ping all day long and get our attention. And if you're not pinging on that smartphone, and if you're not pinging on that on your smartwatch, you are missing out, and another accountant out there is going to take your client. So whose client is it anyway? It's yours at the moment, but you've got to be forward thinking to keep that client. First step, make a decision. Tiny steps. Don't eat the elephant all in one go. Baby bites. But make that first bite and start eating that elephant, because if you want to keep that client, you have to do what the client wants, not what you want.
Excellent. Well, thanks, Amanda. Thanks, Dan. And thanks, Alan. I'm afraid that's all we've got left for today's session. So thanks very much for tuning in. And I hope you picked up some great information from the session. Until next time, have a good day.